Captain Vextar's reptilian eyes burned with desperation as he studied the holographic star map floating above the command table. The crimson light cast eerie shadows across his scarred face, highlighting the fresh wounds from their latest disaster. 3 months of failed raids had left the Bloodfang nearly empty, and worse half his crew was dead. Captain Krell's deep voice rumbled through the bridge. The massive Bruthan warrior's body was covered in ritual scars, each one telling a story of survival. His cybernetic arm whirred as he clenched his fist. The boys are talking mutiny. We lost good pirates on Kepler Station. And for what? Empty shipping containers and security drones. Vextar's forked tongue flicked out nervously. In 30 years of piracy, he'd never seen luck this bad. The Galactic Trade Federation had upgraded their security systems, making even the smallest merchant vessels deadly to approach. His reputation as the most feared pirate captain in the Outer Rim was crumbling faster than his ship's aging hull. "Sir," squeaked Scrix from the navigation console, his insectoid wings buzzing with anxiety. "Fuel reserves are critical. We have maybe one more hyperspace jump before we're stranded in deep space." The bridge fell silent except for the steady hum of life support systems. Vextar could feel the weight of 23 pairs of eyes watching him. Pirates respected strength, and weakness meant death. He needed a miracle, and he needed it now. That's when his claw traced across a section of the star map that seemed to absorb light itself. Forbidden Zone Epsilon 7 stretched across 17 star systems, marked with warning symbols in every known galactic language. The area had been off limits for over 500 years. It declared a death zone by the Galactic Council after the first exploration fleets vanished without a trace. "What about this?" Vextar muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. Scrix's compound eyes widened in horror. "Captain, no. The legends say that space itself is cursed. Every ship that enters either disappears or returns with the crew dead, mumbling about impossible things." Legends. Vextar spat, his confidence returning. "You know what I think? I think the Council found something valuable in there and doesn't want anyone else to have it." The crew exchanged nervous glances. Even among pirates there were lines. You didn't cross, and entering forbidden space was one of them. Krell stepped forward, his massive frame casting a shadow over the star map. "Boss, I've followed you through hell and back, but this feels different. My grandfather used to tell stories about that sector. Ships that come back, they're not the same." "Your grandfather was a drunk and a coward," Vextar snapped, though his words lacked conviction. "Think about it logically. 500 years of isolation, no scavengers, no competitors, no interference. Whatever's in there has been sitting untouched for centuries." He began pacing the bridge, his claws clicking against the metal floor. "Ancient technology, lost civilizations, maybe even pre-war artifacts. The kind of treasure that could buy us a fleet of dreadnoughts, or get us all killed," whispered Zara, the ship's mechanic, her tentacles writhing nervously around her tool belt. "We're already dead," Vextar roared, his patience finally snapping. "Look around you. Half our crew is gone. We're out of fuel, and every bounty hunter in the galaxy is looking for us. We can either die slowly out here, or we can take one last chance at glory." The silence stretched on until Krell finally nodded. "If we're going to die anyway, might as well die rich." Vextar grinned, revealing rows of razor-sharp teeth. "That's the spirit." Scrix plot a course for the edge of the Forbidden Zone. "Well, do a quick reconnaissance, grab whatever we can find, and be out before anyone knows we were there." The navigator's wings buzzed frantically, but he began entering coordinates into the ship's computer. "Jump calculated, Captain." "But sir, once we enter hyperspace, there's no turning back. We won't have enough fuel for a return trip if we don't find something valuable." "Then we better find something," Vextar said, settling into his command chair. "All hands, prepare for hyperspace. We're about to become the first pirates to successfully raid the Forbidden Zone." As the Bloodfang's engines powered up, creating a low thrumming that vibrated through the hull, the crew strapped themselves in. The ship's computer began its countdown, and reality started to bend around them as they prepared to enter hyperspace. 10 seconds to jump," Scrix announced. His voice shaking, Vextar gripped the armrests of his chair, his heart pounding with equal parts terror and excitement. In a few minutes, they would either be rich beyond their wildest dreams or dead in the cold vacuum of space. The stars stretched into lines of light as the Bloodfang disappeared into hyperspace, carrying its desperate crew toward their date with destiny in the most dangerous sector of the galaxy. The moment the Bloodfang dropped out of hyperspace, every alarm on the bridge started screaming. A massive energy barrier, invisible until they were right on top of it, crackled with electric blue power that stretched across the entire star system like a giant net. "What the hell is that?" Vexstar shouted over the deafening alarms. "Some kind of defensive grid," Scrix chittered, his 6 arms dancing across the control panels. "It's scanning us, Captain. The energy readings are off the charts." Oh, before anyone could react, tendrils of pure energy lashed out from the barrier and wrapped around their ship. The Bloodfang's military-grade shields, designed to withstand battleship cannons, lasted exactly 3 seconds before collapsing completely. "Shields down," Zara screamed from the engineering station, hull integrity dropping fast. The energy barrier didn't just damage their ship, seemed to be pulling them deeper into the forbidden zone. Vexstar watched in horror as control panels exploded in showers of sparks, filling the bridge with acrid smoke. His cybernetic arms sparking as he tried to maintain his grip on the tactical console. "It's dragging us toward that planet." Through the smoke and chaos, Vexstar could see a beautiful blue-green world growing larger in the view screen. It looked peaceful, covered in forests and oceans, with white clouds swirling across its surface. Nothing about it seemed dangerous, which made it even more terrifying. "Emergency power to engines," Vexstar roared. "Get us out of here!" "No good, boss." Zara's tentacles were wrapped around her control station as the ship shook violently. "Whatever's got us is stronger than our engines. We're going down whether we like it or not." The Bloodfang hit the planet's atmosphere like a meteor, flames engulfing the hull as they plummeted toward the surface. Through the view screen, Vexstar could see they were heading straight for what looked like farmland green fields stretching to the horizon, dotted with small buildings that looked almost primitive. "Brace for impact!" he bellowed. Just as the ship slammed into the soft earth with a thunderous crash, the world went black. When Vexstar regained consciousness, his head felt like it had been split open with an axe. Emergency lighting cast eerie red shadows throughout the bridge, and he could hear the hiss of escaping atmosphere somewhere in the distance. "Sound off," he groaned, pulling himself upright. "Still breathing," Captain Krell rumbled, shaking debris from his massive shoulders. "Navigation systems are fried," Scrix reported, his wings buzzing nervously. "But life support is holding. Engineering here." Zara's voice crackled through the cum. "We're not flying anywhere soon, but the ship's intact. Could have been worse." Vexstar limped to the view screen and peered outside. They had carved a deep furrow through what appeared to be a wheat field, leaving a trail of destruction hundreds of meters long. But what caught his attention wasn't the damage, it was the figure standing just outside their ship. "We've got company," he announced. The crew gathered around the view screen, staring in disbelief. Surrounding the Bloodfang were dozens of humans, or at least, they looked human. They wore simple clothes that seemed handmade, rough tunics, leather boots, and cloth wrappings. Many carried weapons, but they were primitive things: wooden bows, metal swords, and carved staffs. "You kidding me?" Krell laughed, his fear evaporating. "We crash land in the most dangerous sector of the galaxy and find a bunch of farmers with pointy sticks." "Maybe they're survivors from an old colony ship," Scrix suggested. "Lost for generations, reverted to a primitive lifestyle." Vexstar studied the humans more carefully. They stood in perfect formation, not crowding together like scared villagers, but arranged in tactical positions around the ship. Their weapons might be primitive, but they held them with the confidence of trained warriors. "Something's not right," he muttered. "Look at their eyes. They're not afraid of us." "Of course they're not afraid," Krell scoffed, checking his plasma rifle. "They've probably never seen real weapons before. This'll be like taking candy from children." The pirates gathered their gear and prepared to exit the ship. Vexstar's plan was simple: intimidate the locals, demand supplies and fuel, and get off. This planet, before anyone important, noticed they were here. The airlock hissed open, and the pirates stepped onto alien soil. The air was clean and fresh, carrying the scent of growing things. It was almost peaceful, which made Vexter's skin crawl. "All right, primitives," Krell bellowed, raising his plasma rifle toward the nearest group of humans. "We're having a bad day, and you're about to make it worse if you don't." He never finished the sentence. A young human man, barely out of his teens, stepped forward calmly. He had dark hair and kind eyes, and he moved with the fluid grace of someone completely at peace with himself. As Krell's finger tightened on the trigger, the young man simply reached out with his bare hand. The plasma bolt, hot enough to melt steel, struck his palm and simply ... stopped. The energy crackled and danced around his fingers like tame lightning before dissolving harmlessly into the air. "I am Taman," the young man said, in perfect galactic standard, his voice carrying easily across the field. "You are not welcome here, but you are not our enemies. Yet." The pirates stood frozen in shock. Plasma weapons were military-grade, designed to punch through armor and shields. No living being should be able to catch one barehanded. "That's impossible," Krell whispered, his rifle shaking in his massive hands. "Many things are impossible," Taman replied with a gentle smile. "They are not." Another human approached their ship, a woman with warm, intelligent eyes and long black hair tied back in a simple braid. She wore the same rough clothing as the others, but there was something about her presence that commanded attention. "Am Hyjin," she said, walking directly to the Bloodfang's damaged hull. "Your ship is hurt. Let me see." Before anyone could stop her, she placed her hands on the front section of their Vasilla, chunk of reinforced metal and ceramic that weighed several tons. Then, as casually as lifting a piece of paper, she raised the entire front end of the ship with one hand and peered underneath to examine the damage. "The structural integrity is compromised," she observed, as if holding up a starship was the most natural thing in the world. "Bet the core systems are intact. This can be repaired." The pirates stared in stunned silence. Their ship weighed over 3,000 tons, yet this woman was supporting it like it was made of foam.
"Ow, what are you?"
"People." Vextar managed to croak. Tay-Min and Hyjin exchanged a look that seemed to contain entire conversations. When they turned back to the pirates, their expressions were patient but serious. "We," Taman said quietly, "are what humanity becomes when it has time to grow." The village hall looked like something from an ancient history book. Wooden beams supported a high ceiling, and simple benches were arranged in neat rows. But as Vextar and his crew were led inside, they noticed details that didn't quite fit. The wood grain seemed to shift and flow like liquid, and the torches on the walls burned with flames that cast no shadows. "Please sit," said an elderly man with silver hair and eyes that seemed to hold the wisdom of centuries. "I am Dongwu, and I have been waiting a long time to tell this story." The pirates reluctantly took seats on the wooden benches. There, weapons still drawn but useless after what they'd witnessed outside. Vextar's mind was racing, trying to process what he'd seen. Humans who could catch plasma bolts and lift starships weren't supposed to exist. 500 years ago, Dongwu began, his voice carrying easily through the hall, despite its gentle tone. "Our ancestors were part of the first great human expansion into the galaxy. Earth was overpopulated, resources were running low, and humanity was desperate to find new worlds." He gestured to the walls, where faded murals showed ancient spaceships leaving a blue planet behind. The New Horizon fleet was humanity's greatest achievement. 50 ships carrying our best and brightest to establish colonies in the furthest reaches of space. But those ships disappeared. Scrix chittered, his compound eyes reflecting the strange torchlight. Every schoolchild knows the story. New Horizon fleet was lost in a hyperspace accident. "That's what we wanted the galaxy to believe," said a young woman who emerged from the shadows. She moved with the fluid grace of a dancer. But there was something else in her movement, an economy of motion that suggested incredible power held in check. "I am Sa-Young," she said, settling onto a bench with impossible lightness. "The accident was real, but it wasn't what destroyed us." Her eyes began to glow with a soft blue light, and Vextar felt his blood run cold. No human eyes should be able to do that. The hyperspace accident tore holes in reality itself, she continued. Our ships were pulled into a space between dimensions, where the normal laws of physics don't apply. Most of our people died in the first few hours, but some survived, Dongwu added, his weathered hands folding in his lap. And in that strange space, exposed to energies that shouldn't exist, we began to change. Krell shifted uncomfortably on his bench, his cybernetic arm worried softly. Change how? Evolution doesn't always take millions of years, So-young replied. Sometimes, under the right conditions, it can happen in a generation. The energies in that dimensional pocket didn't just change our bodies, they changed our DNA, our minds, our very souls. Taemin stepped forward, his young face serious. When we finally found our way back to normal space, we were no longer the same humans who had left Earth. We were stronger, faster, smarter. We could manipulate matter at the molecular level, see across vast distances, understand the fundamental forces of the universe. But we were also terrified, Hyjin added softly. We had become something beyond human, and we didn't know what that meant. So we hid. She gestured to the simple village around them. This is camouflage. We learned early that appearing weak and primitive keeps us safe while we continue to grow and learn about our new abilities. The Galactic Council. Found you anyway, Vexter said, his voice barely above a whisper. Oh yes, Dongwu chuckled, but there was no humor in it. About 200 years ago, a council exploration fleet stumbled into this sector. They saw what we had become, and they were terrified. I offered us a choice, So-young said. Her eyes flashing with remembered anger. Join the council and submit to their control, or be declared a threat to galactic peace. We chose a third option, said a new voice. Everyone turned to see a young man entering the hall. He was tall and lean, with the same dark hair and kind eyes as the others, but there was something different about him. Power radiated from him like heat from a forge, and even the air seemed to bend around his presence. I am Jinwoo, he said simply, and I was there when the council ships arrived. He moved to stand beside the other humans, and Vexstar noticed that they all seemed to defer to him slightly. This was clearly someone important. The council fleet consisted of 12 dreadnoughts, Jinwoo continued. They came in battle formation, weapons charged, ready to destroy us if we didn't surrender. What happened? Skrix asked, his wings buzzing. With nervous energy? We disabled their entire fleet without firing a single shot, Jinwoo replied calmly. We simply reached out with our minds and turned off their engines, their weapons, their life support systems. Then we had a conversation that lasted 3 days, Dongwu added. In the end, the council agreed to declare this sector forbidden and leave us alone. They created the Forbidden Zone, Hyjin confirmed. Not to protect the galaxy from us, but to contain us. They fear what we might become if we continue to evolve. And they were right to fear us, Jinwoo said, his voice carrying a weight that made the pirates shiver. But not for the reasons they think. He walked to the center of the hall, and suddenly the walls became transparent. The pirates gasped as they saw the truth beyond the village's humble appearance. Gleaming cities stretched to the horizon, their spires reaching toward the stars. Ships that looked like living things moved through the air, and in the distance, massive structures that could only be space elevators connected the planet to orbital stations. We don't want to conquer the galaxy, Jinwoo said softly. We want to save it. The council thinks we're a threat because we're powerful. But real power isn't about strength, it's about choosing when not to use it. Every species in the galaxy is fighting, competing, destroying each other for resources and territory, So-young added. We've learned that there's a better way. We've learned to grow beyond the need for war. But the galaxy isn't ready for that lesson yet, Taemin said sadly. So we wait. We grow. We prepare for the day when we can step out of the shadows and show everyone what humanity can really become. The walls returned to their wooden appearance, but the pirates would never forget what they'd seen. They were sitting in the presence of gods who had chosen to live as farmers, of beings who could reshape the galaxy but preferred to tend gardens. Why are you telling us this? Vexter asked, his voice hoarse with emotion. 'Cause Ginwu said with a smile that held the warmth of 1,000 suns. Every great change begins with a single choice. And today, you get to make that choice. The pirates looked at each other, knowing that their lives had just changed forever. They had come seeking treasure and found something far more valuable: hope for a future none of them had dared to imagine. "If we're going to trust you with our secret," Dongwu said, his ancient eyes studying each pirate carefully, "you need to understand exactly what you've stumbled into." He led them to what looked like an old wooden door at the back of the village hall, but when So Young placed her hand on the surface, it dissolved like mist, revealing a corridor that stretched deep into the earth. The walls were made of some kind of living crystal that pulsed with soft light. "This can't be real," Scrix whispered, his insect wings trembling as they descended deeper underground. "Reality is more flexible than most people think," Ginwu replied, his footsteps silent on the crystal floor. The corridor opened into a vast, underground chamber that took the pirates' breath away. The ceiling stretched so high it disappeared into darkness, and spread out before them was a city that defied everything they thought they knew about architecture and engineering. Crystalline spires twisted upward like frozen lightning, their surfaces reflecting light that seemed to come from within. Bridges of pure energy connected the towers, and floating platforms carried people through the air like leaves on an invisible wind. Above it all, artificial suns provided warmth and light, their gentle glow making the entire city feel alive. "To New Haven," Taman said, gesturing to the magnificent sight. "Our first city, built 300 years ago." Ashtar's reptilian jaw hung open. The city was easily 10 times larger than the galactic capital, yet it was hidden completely underground. "How is this possible? When you can manipulate matter at the atomic level," So Young explained. "Building becomes an art form rather than an engineering challenge. We grew this city from the living rock itself." As they walked through streets that hummed with barely contained energy, the pirates saw wonders that challenged their understanding of physics. Humans floated through the air without any visible means of propulsion, their bodies moving with perfect control. Children played games that involved reshaping metal with their bare hands, laughing as they turned steel bars into flowers and back again. "The gravity here feels wrong," Krell muttered, cybernetic arms sparking as it tried to compensate for the strange sensations. "We adjust local gravity to suit our needs," Hyjin said casually. "Some areas are 0G for manufacturing, others have heavy gravity for training. It's all controlled by thought." They passed a group of humans working on what looked like a sculpture, but as the pirates watched, they realized the artists were actually building a spacecraft. The metal flowed like liquid under their touch, forming complex curves and structures that would have been impossible to create with conventional tools. "This is just one settlement," So Young explained, as they continued through the city. "We have 12 planets in this sector, each more advanced than the last. This is actually one of our simpler colonies." "Simpler?" Zara gasped, her tentacles writhing in amazement. "This place makes the galactic core worlds look like primitive outposts." "Wait until you see what we've built in the outer systems," Jinwu said with a smile. "But first, we want you to understand what individual humans can accomplish." Reached a central plaza where hundreds of humans had gathered. The space was enormous, with a domed ceiling that showed real-time images of the stars above. In the center stood a boulder the size of a small building, its surface scarred and ancient. "This is a fragment of the original asteroid we used to build New Haven," Dongwu explained. "It's composed of the hardest materials in the galaxy, metals that can withstand the heat of a star's core." Ginwu stepped forward, rolling up his sleeves like a farmer preparing for work. "Physical matter is just energy arranged in a particular pattern. Once you understand that, changing it becomes a matter of will." He placed his hands on the massive boulder, and the pirates watched in stunned silence as cracks began to appear in the stone. The cracks spread like spiderwebs, glowing with the same soft light that illuminated the city. "This would take our best mining equipment weeks to break down," Krell whispered. Jinwu closed his eyes. And suddenly, the entire boulder began to vibrate. The vibration grew stronger, and the stone started to crumble. But instead of falling in chunks, it dissolved into fine dust that sparkled in the artificial sunlight. "Our scientists can manipulate matter at the molecular level," Taman explained, As the dust settled, our warriors can move faster than light itself. Our children learn to reshape reality as easily as you learn to walk. But the most impressive thing, Sa Young added, isn't what we can do to matter. It's what we can do with space itself. As if summoned by her words, a shadow fell across the plaza. The pirates looked up to see something that made their blood run cold. A massive shape was materializing above them, blocking out the artificial suns. The vessel was unlike anything in the Galactic Fleet registries. It looked alive, with organic curves and surfaces that seemed to breathe. It was easily 3 times the size of a Council dreadnought, but it moved with the grace of a living creature. "That's a scout ship," Hyjin said casually, as if planet-sized. Vessels appeared over their heads every day. "A scout ship," Vextar's voice cracked. "That thing could destroy entire fleets." "It could," Jinwoo agreed, "but it's not designed for war. It's designed for exploration, for finding new worlds where life can flourish." The ship's hull shimmered, and suddenly the pirates could see through it. Inside, vast gardens stretched. 4 kilometers, filled with plants and animals from 1,000 different worlds. Cities floated in the ship's atmosphere, connected by streams of water that flowed upward in impossible spirals. "We don't build weapons," Taman said quietly. "Build homes. Entire civilizations can live comfortably in our smallest vessels." "The galaxy thinks in terms of conquest and destruction," So Young added. "We think in terms of growth and creation. That's why the Council fears us, not because we're strong, but because we represent everything they're not." Captain Vextar felt something he'd never experienced before. Genuine fear mixed with awe. He'd spent his entire life as a predator, taking what he wanted from those weaker than himself. But standing in this crystal city, watching humans casually perform miracles, he realized he was in the presence of beings who could erase him from existence with a thought. More terrifying than their power was their restraint. They could have vaporized the Blood Fang the moment it entered their space. But instead, they'd chosen to show mercy. They could rule the galaxy as gods, but they preferred to tend gardens in secret. "Why?" he whispered. "Why hide all this? Why not take your place as the rulers of the galaxy?" "Because," Jinwoo said, his voice carrying the weight of centuries, "true power isn't about ruling others. It's about inspiring them to become better than they are." The scout ship began to fade, returning to whatever dimension it had come from. But its brief appearance had changed everything. The pirates now understood that they hadn't just stumbled into a hidden, low colony. They discovered the future of intelligent life itself. "Now you know our secret," Dongwu said, his ancient eyes boring into each pirate. "The question is, what will you do with it?" The Bloodfang sat in the village square like a metal beast among flowers, its hull gleaming with impossible perfection. What had been a twisted wreck of damaged metal just hours before was now restored to better condition than when it first left the shipyard. The humans had worked on it with their bare hands, reshaping steel and repairing circuits as easily as mending cloth. "Incredible," Zara whispered, running her tentacles over the ship's hull. "They didn't just fix the damage, they improved everything. The engines are more efficient, the shields are stronger, and the life support systems are working better than ever." Vextar stood in the shadow of his restored vessel, his mind churning with possibilities. In his clawed hands, he held a data pad containing coordinates, energy signatures, and detailed scans of everything they'd seen. Information that would be worth more than all the treasure in the galaxy. "You're thinking about it," Dongwu said quietly, approaching the pirate captain. "I can see it in your eyes. You're calculating how much this knowledge would be worth." "Of course I am," Vextar replied honestly. "Do you know what the Trade Federation would pay for the location of this place? What the Council would offer for detailed intelligence on your capabilities?" "Enough to buy your own fleet," Jinwoo said, materializing beside them with that unsettling silence all the humans seemed to possess. "Enough to become the most powerful pirate lord in galactic history." "Or," So Young added, stepping out of the crowd of villagers, "it's enough to start a war that would consume billions of lives." The weight of that statement settled over the group like a shroud. Vextar had seen galactic wars before, the systematic destruction of entire star systems, the genocide of species who got in the way of imperial expansion. If the galaxy's major powers learned about this place, they wouldn't come to negotiate. They'd come with everything they had, Scrix chittered nervously. Battle fleets, planet crackers, maybe even star destroyers. And they'd all die, Taman said sadly. We don't want to hurt anyone, but we won't allow ourselves to be conquered either. A war between us and the galaxy would end only one way. With you ruling over the ashes, Krell growled, his cybernetic arm worry as he clenched his fist. No, Hyjin replied, her voice heavy with sorrow. With us leaving this dimension entirely, we've done it before. When the pressure became too great, it can slip between realities. Find a new universe where we can grow in peace. The pirates stared at her in shock. The idea that beings could simply leave reality itself was beyond their comprehension. You'd abandon the galaxy? Vexstar asked. Necessary, Jinwoo confirmed. But we'd prefer not to. This galaxy has potential. Every species, every world, every life form has something unique to offer. We want to be here when they're ready to reach for something better. Ready for what? Atzara asked, her tentacles curling. Nervously, evolution, Saoyoung said simply. Not just biological evolution, but social, spiritual, technological. The galaxy is still trapped in cycles of violence and scarcity. We want to help break those cycles. But only when they're ready, Dongwu added. Force never creates lasting change. It has to come from within. Captain Vexstar looked at his crew, seeing the conflict in their eyes. These were hardened pirates who had spent their lives taking what they wanted from others. But they'd also seen wonders beyond imagination, witnessed power beyond their wildest dreams wielded with perfect restraint. What exactly are you asking us to do? He said finally. Oh. Be our eyes and ears, Jinwoo replied. Travel the galaxy as you always have, but watch for signs of change. Look for species that are beginning to question the old ways, worlds that are ready to try something different. And when we find them, Krell asked, then you guide them here, Taman said. Carefully, gradually, when they're ready. We'll teach them what we've learned, help them take their next step forward. You want us to become recruiters? Vexstar said slowly. We want you to become gardeners, Saoyoung corrected. Helping to plant seeds of change that will grow into something beautiful. The pirate captain was quiet for a long moment, staring at the datapad in his hands. With a sudden motion, he crushed it, the delicate electronics sparking and dying. Why should we trust you? Krell spat, his scarred face twisted with suspicion. You could crush us like insects whenever you wanted. Because, Taman said with a gentle smile that somehow contained infinite wisdom, that's exactly what the old galaxy would do. We choose to be better. The words hung in the air like a challenge and a promise. Vexstar looked at his crew, seeing the same realization dawning in their eyes. They'd spent their lives surrounded by violence and betrayal, where strength was measured by how much damage you could inflict. But here were beings of unimaginable power who chose compassion over conquest. The information dies with us, Vexstar declared, his voice carrying the weight of a solemn oath. But the alliance, that starts today. Shuang stepped forward and clasped the pirate captain's claw in her small human hand. Despite her delicate appearance, Vexstar could feel the barely contained power in her grip enough to crush his bones to powder, yet gentle as a child's touch. Welcome to humanity's first galactic embassy, Captain, she said with a warm smile. We have much work to do. As the crew of the Bloodfang prepared to depart, they knew they were no longer the same beings who had crashed on this world. Carried with them something more precious than any treasure. Hope for a future where the galaxy's endless cycles of war and suffering could finally end. The ship's engines hummed with new efficiency as they lifted off from the village square. Through the viewports, they could see the humans waving goodbye, their faces bright with optimism. To anyone watching, it would look like a simple farming community, bidding farewell to unexpected visitors. But Vexstar and his crew knew the truth. They were leaving behind the most advanced civilization in the galaxy, carrying with them the responsibility of preparing the stars for humanity's eventual emergence. Where to, Captain? Scrix asked from the navigation console. The Outer Rim? Vexstar replied, settling into his command chair. There's a system there where the local government is getting tired of corporate rule. They might be ready to hear about alternative ways of organizing society, and after that, Zara asked. After that, we keep looking, the captain said. The galaxy is full of species ready for something better. We just need to help them find it. As the Blood Fang entered hyperspace, its hull gleaming with impossible perfection, the Forbidden Zone returned to its deceptive quiet. The energy barriers hummed with patient power, waiting for the day when they would no longer be needed. Somewhere in the depths of space, other ships were already beginning to change course, their crews guided by subtle suggestions and chance. Encounters. The seeds of transformation were being planted across the galaxy, tended by unlikely gardeners who had once been pirates. The Forbidden Zone would remain forbidden for now. But when the time came, when the galaxy was finally ready, humanity would emerge not as conquerors, but as the teachers of a new age. The END.